Welcome to the Meniscus website, where we're going to have a quick look at the new Meniscus API, RESTful API that we've just created and we've just loaded and launched recently. And this API allows users to interact directly with the calculation engine, to upload raw data, to get that raw data converted into any sort of calculated data that they want, and to be able to download all the data structure associated to the way that that's laid out. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick look at initially how to create an account, how to download a little application that we've got to make it all much simpler for you to test this all out and to see the underlying code. And then we're going to go in and have a quick look at looking at the overall data structure. We're going to create an item, we're going to load some input data, and we're going to make a few changes to the properties of the item so you can see how the calculation engine starts to work. So initially, if we go and the first thing we have to do is go and create an account. So if you go into the Meniscus website, into the Developers and IT Managers section, you'll see at the bottom of the very first page it says Create a Demo Account. You'll be asked for a username and a password, and this will go onto our dev server, and it will create a new account with about 20 items set up, which come from our home energy monitoring service. And effectively, these items will allow you to start to get an understanding of some of the properties, some of the calculation syntax, and if you want to, you can start playing with that data and load up data into it and start seeing how all the calculations tick through, and you can start playing with things. So once that account is created, we would suggest you go onto this link here, which is the API Visual Studio 2010 project. This is a little project that we've created that includes within it the get and the post methods, so that you don't have to write any code. You can just download this, click on this link, the first link here, and that will download a little zip file which has the application within it. If you want to see the source code, then please click on the second link, and that downloads another zip file, and it's got the application and all the source code, which you'd have to run in Visual Studio to compile. So that's essentially what we need to do. So if you've created the account, if you download this application, once you've downloaded the application, it will look something like this. So let me just take those out and I'll fill those in. So I apologize for the colors. We're not very great on colors. We don't spend that much time on that side of things at the moment. What we've done is just get the functionality into this piece of code. So this is the little application. If I just put in my username and password that I used, so this is my username and password that I used to create my account. So the very first thing we can do is we can look at the structure of the data. So the structure of the data is defined in groups. Now all the definitions behind the web service are on the Meniscus website, and there's a lot of information on the blogs, and we're constantly adding to this. So I'm going to not try to explain things here. All the information is on the blog, so I'm going to ask you to go and have a look at those blog articles if possible, and the definitions. So everything will hopefully be explained from the web page and the blog items. So this is the group structure. This application automatically defaults into, on this particular demo server, this is my first layer of the groups. That's my first group, is my demo. So this is all being set up in demo. So if I get my first group, I've got the name of my the second group which is being created. So this is essentially when you created your account, this is the name of the second group that was created. So I'm just going to put that into the URL and go and get the next layer. So this is now we're going down and getting the third layer of data. So we can look at what's in the electricity meter section. So paste that back in, get the groups, and we can then say, right, let's look at what are the items that are in the fourth layer of the groups. And this is the last layer. So we have essentially the structure has 4 groups within it. So when you get the layer of the structure, you'll see all the items that are actually included. Now this is just the names of the items. So this is the actual name of the item here, electricity use underscore channel 3 underscore HH. So layer 1, group 1, group 2, and then this is the item associated into the groups. So these are basically, and these are assigned into into the group structure. So what I'm going to do now is to look at, if we look at all the items. So that just gives us a bit of a group structure. If we want to look at all the items and all the item properties, we can use the second link. So you don't need to change anything, it should just work straight away. And what you're now getting is that this returns all of the item properties associated to this particular item. So we have an item called electricity use channel 1, that's the name of the item. It's associated in, you'll see in the definitions that all items are directly associated into group 2, so that's where they all reside. Groups 3 and 4 are just for structure purposes. So this is the item type. Again, all these definitions are on the web page, and these are all the properties that we have set up, and we can look at changing some of the properties later on very quickly and see how they change the nature of the data. And we can go down the bottom and see that the very last item that we've got created down here is this one called test meter. And this is some of the syntax. You can start looking at how things are structured. So that's what the list items does. We're now going to go and we're going to create an item. So I'm going to create an item called mic test. So let me change that item. So we're going to create an item called mic test. There are four properties that have to be added every time you create an item. You have to add an aggregation period, an aggregation function, the units, the cost, and the type. These are all essential, and they're defined on the blog items, etc. So what I'm going to do first of all, actually I'm going to leave this at day, the aggregation period at day, and I'll briefly come on to that later. So let's just create this item. So that's now created, that's a successful message. So if we go back into list items and we go down the bottom, we can see that we've just created this new item called mic test, and these are the attributes of that particular item. What we're now going to do is to quickly load in some raw data into this item. So remember, the purpose of this API is to allow you to load up raw data and then to define any sort of calculation to turn that raw data into calculated data. And the calculated data is the information that you want to be able to download into your own web apps and things. So what we're going to do, I'm going to load up this data using this. So this bottom one will post data. We can either post random data or we can post data from a file. So we're going to post data from a file in a minute. The top item will get data, so that'll actually go and get either my raw or my calculated data and return it into the browser. When you do this if you use this URL in a browser, it'll actually download it into a file onto your PC. So let's just change this into the meter we just created called mic test. We have to load it up into the raw item type. Again, there's more information on this on the blog. Let's go and find this file that we've created. It's in my C, it's in export, and it's called mic test. Now you'll see that here basically it's a simple comma separated file. First column is the date and the timestamp, and the second column is the value. So these are just random values I've created for a 3-day period. You'll see that the data is loaded every 15 minutes. So this is time series data loaded every 15 minutes. Now that 15-minute period is what we term as periodicity of the data. So that's the periodicity of the raw data. So we're loading raw data in 15-minute intervals. So we can load that in, and that's just written all that data back into the database. And if we now go and get this data, so I'm just going to change the date and time from here into the start date is the beginning of October, and the end date, let's just put it back as the 10th of October, and we'll get calculated data, and we'll get this data for the item type called mic test. So the item mic test, which is the one we've just loaded that data into. Make sure it's spelt right. So that should get this data that we've just loaded up, and it will get the calculated data. Now, so what it's now returning? It's returning this is the first set of data is what the data would actually look like if you download it into your PC. So this is JSON serialized data, and all dates are shown as ticks. And what we've done, we've just converted that into simple format so you can understand. It's much easier to quickly explain what we're seeing here. So what this has done, this the calculation engine has turned the raw data, which we loaded at a periodicity of 15 minutes, and it was loaded with an aggregation period, a function of sum, so it has summed all that 15-minute raw data into a single daily reading of, so 4813 is the sum of all my 15-minute readings for that day. So that's what that's what the calculation engine's done so far. So what I'm just going to do very quickly is just to change the aggregation period of that data, so we can see how to change that and what it does, and how it changes that calculated data. Once you've got this basic understanding, then in different videos we can then show how to add a different calculation or load different calculations in, so that you can convert that data into more interesting numbers. So we're just going to do a very simple thing now of just changing the aggregation period. So the term is aggregation period, and if you do forget what it is, if you click on parameters, you'll just be able to see a list of the parameters and a quick a description of what that parameter does. So we're going to change the aggregation period for this item called Mike Test, and we're going to change it into aggregation period. We're going to change it into 30 minutes. Okay, so let me just update that item, make sure that's right. Okay, so that's correct. So again, if we go back and we list the items, we can go back to the bottom, we can now see that the aggregation period has changed from, it was day, so it's now changed into 30 minutes. So again, remember that the raw data we loaded at 15-minute data, we did aggregate it up to a day. We now have changed that aggregation period to 30 minutes, and so now if I go back and I get the same data for the same day, you'll now see that we've got data which is aggregating it at 30-minute intervals. So so very quickly, what I've wanted to do in this little video is to give you an idea of how to create an account, how to get the application, a little application to make it simple for you to play with the data, how to use the tabs and the URLs to show the data structure, to show all the properties of items, how to create an item, and finally how to load data up into that item, so raw data into that item, and to download the calculated data, and then finally to how to change one of the properties of that item. And in later videos we'll be going through changing calculations, adding costs, changing the aliases, and other more complicated features within the calculation engine. So this is very, very simple, quick view of it. So hopefully that's been of interest to you. If you wanted any more information, please send us a mail or message on the website, and please spend some time having a look at the blog item articles. They do provide a lot of the background information onto the descriptions of how things work and some of the functionality that we've got. So thanks again for listening, and I hope to speak to you again on another video. Bye.